How do you assess ROI on innovation?
So if you're looking at it from innovation as an ROI metric, you wouldn't do right. It's just not possible.
Where do you think robots have their place or like robotic solutions have their place within construction?
Robots are inherently cool.
Yes.
Like, I don't know anybody that doesn't think.
What's the most, what's the technology that you come across the most recently that people throw at you?
I think you know really well. Yeah. Everything on it now, right?
How is technology actually used in AEC? In corporate innovations, we explore the innovation and implementation procedures used by those who actually use the tech on a day-to-day basis. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode.
Hammad, welcome on Bricks and Bytes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you having worked in EllisDon's for over a decade, you started there as a project coordinator, then BIM coordinator, virtual design and construction manager, director or virtual design and construction through national director, and now at the present role of vice president in innovation and construction technology. So hell of a journey in one organization. So can you tell us about the journey and how come that you gravitated towards construction technology in your career?
Yeah, Martin, I started off wanting to become an architect originally. So I went to University of Calgary, was doing my undergrad in urban studies, and then I needed to get out into the workforce quickly. So then I went to SAIT, which is a polytechnic in Calgary, to do my diploma in architecture. Worked in architecture for 2+ years, doing details, production work. And then a couple of my friends worked at EllisDon's, and the construction market was really, really hot at that time in Calgary. And EllisDon's was building a lot of cool, premier, really big projects from the airport to high rises downtown. Mm-hmm. And so my first interview with EllisDon's, they asked me to do a field engineer position, which essentially you're out in the field, you're helping with the layout, managing some of the trades, making sure everything's going the right place. I said, I'd rather do something more traditional, project management. So they called me back a couple weeks later, offered me a role as a project coordinator / BIM coordinator. At the time, BIM was kind of coming up. Not too many people had lots of experience.
Which year was it?
This was 2013, 2014. Mm-hmm. So it's been in the industry, but generally across the board, not many people have experience with it. So I took that role on, worked on a great project, but our project managers, CMs, and superintendents didn't think that BIM role was something that deserved a full-time allocation. So most of my time was spent doing project coordinator work and BIM coordinator work. So it was a lot during a short period of time. Mm-hmm. Once that project wrapped up, the economy was slowing down here in Alberta, given the oil and gas nature of the economy. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening was a lot of jobs were not going through within our market. So you had a boom in British Columbia, Vancouver, Toronto, Ontario, out east. But in Alberta, things dried up. So a lot of people were losing their jobs at that time within the construction industry, and obviously in the oil and gas industry as well. But they said, hey, can you go to the head office, just help out for a bit? The project that you're on is wrapping up. So I did a lot of random projects and jobs wherever they threw me at. One example is running estimates or bids. Back then you'd have the envelope, they'd put the seal on it, drop it off by the time deadline physically. So that was a cool experience. I worked with also our business development managers who were from last kind of generation, if you will. So printing everything out, having massive binders, and they'd say things like, "Hey, Hammad, we did this project in 2008 or 2002. Go find that binder." So finding that and then typing things up for them until they put me into our special projects division, which is interior fit outs, fast paced projects, really, really quick turnaround. So I went from one mega project to doing these odds and sods to working on 8 different active projects, which gave me a lot of insight very quickly. Everything that you could imagine, from things going around, procurement issues to shop drawing specs, adherence, closeout, all within the same period. And then after that, an opportunity came up where they wanted me to look at the BIM and VDC department for Western Canada. So I said, yeah, sure. Why not? Let's do that. So since then, I've just been continuously working more and more towards construction technology. Even before I knew the kind of common term Contech existed, it's just kind of like, hey, why don't we work with these new startups, these new technologies? We should bring some of those processes in. And that's how
when this concept of construction tech was kind of started, or people started calling construction tech Contech.
For me, the first time I heard it was because of James Benham and the Contech crew. So that old school podcast he used to run, and now Jeff Sample is continuing to run that, and a few good folks over there. So that's the first time I heard it, like just generally. But in wild or in real life, I didn't really hear it until post-COVID, to be honest. Like from people. Yeah.
Yes.
What about you?
Well, for us, I guess after a while, once we started recording chats with people, and then I think, at some point, so probably also after COVID, in our case.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, going back to your, you said national division of BIM, I think, yes?
Yeah, so I was doing first the West Coast, so Western Canada, and then not too long after that, I started looking after the team across Canada and nationally. And then from there, we did a few things over a couple of years, from the BIM team and VDC team becoming digital project delivery, starting to put more energy around the drone program. And we did, unofficially start a pilot program where we were bringing in tools like AI clearing was one of the first pilots that we rolled out. Bringing those technologies in and testing them out. And then last year, formally, I got promoted to my current position of innovation and construction technology, which also leads into kind of the Contech Accelerator and all these other initiatives that we're pushing forward.
So you're starting with heavily with BIM, right, and design portion of technology. So is my right conclusion that technology in construction used to be like design and computer-aided design, etc., and right now it's more not only design but also kind of robotics and some other areas of technology? Would you agree with that, or that's not the flavor?
It's a bit tough to answer that because there's a little bit of a caveat that comes up. So if you think about the industry as, let's say, 100 companies, right, including architecture, engineering, construction, maybe about 10 or 15 of them are at a scale where they're looking at things like robotics and, a little bit more of the AI bit. The vast majority of organizations are still, I think, not at that level, right? So on the leading edge, for sure, you're looking at organizations like ours and our peers and our competitors looking at robots, looking at automation, looking at even AI. But when you look at across Canada, for example, or, the US, the instances of projects and companies that exist compared to where the technology is, I think we're still obviously a little bit more towards that CAD era. Maybe even still transitioning properly to the BIM era, which hasn't completed that transition yet, I'd say.
Yeah, I got the same feeling. So can you give me a little bit of perhaps numbers and explain EllisDon? What do you guys do? What type of projects? How many employees? Maybe you can share. And what's the turnover, if that's that's public, geographies, etc.?
Yeah, so EllisDon is a remarkable Canadian business success story. 70 years old plus now. Started off by two brothers in London, Ontario, not the UK, the other London, and has grown very, very quickly into Canada's #1 construction services organization. To your point, not just within Canada, operate around the world. There's a big presence for project management services within Middle East, North Africa, some stuff in South America as well. In the US, primarily, we're focused with our branch of EllisDon Capital, which does a lot of the capital side of public-private partnership deals. In Canada, anything that you can imagine, right? So from designing, building, operating, furnishing, financing, anything that can be built, any type of project, whether it's a renovation to a coffee shop or a brand new mega hospital that's never been seen before in scope and size, you name it. In terms of employee size, EllisDon's probably around 4,000 to 5,000 employees now. Canadian annual revenue for this year is probably $6 to $7 billion. In terms of market segments, pretty much any market segment. We may not have as much of a footprint, right now in heavy civil, but they still do amazing projects. So like the Portland project downtown Toronto, they're redoing the waterway there with the Don River. EllisDon also did this project, a joint venture called Kiask, which is this massive hydro dam in Manitoba. So there is that presence there, but I think, institutional, commercial, industrial, life sciences, data centers, highways, roads, bridges, all that kind of stuff is the bread and butter.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps also the reason for not that many like heavy civils projects is that perhaps like current environment that there's not that many things being built in Canada of that size. I actually don't know. So that's a question actually to you. Is that the case, or you guys don't get involved for certain reasons in those projects?
There are some large, heavy civil projects for sure. I think it's just a market segment maybe that has other folks that have a little bit more experience and a focus on. There's a different risk profile altogether. EllisDon did do quite a few of the LRT projects, which were massive light rail transit jobs in Toronto, in Edmonton, and in Ottawa. And so that was a little bit of a kind of a high risk endeavor. So I think that also has helped. And then also majority of EllisDon's work is repeat clients. I can't remember exactly, but it's over 90% or something very, very high. So when you have all these other clients, healthcare, commercial, institutional, continuously coming back as well, I think that helps as well grow the business. And we've, I think, reached a point now within Canada, there's only EllisDon and one other competitor that really operate at that scale too. So I think it's a little bit of the risk profile, the market saturation.
Yeah, that's fair. You mentioned earlier, before we go to innovation, you mentioned earlier that the market used to be heavily dependent on oil, I think, right? And boom and bust of oil, right? Is it still the case or not really?
For Alberta, I'd say there's still a big reliance on the energy industry. There's no getting away from that. It's one of the key drivers, of course, of our GDP. In Canada, maybe there is a divergence a little bit. Of course, Canadians benefit greatly when it comes to the energy from Alberta and getting that out to markets. There's a big uplift, of course, for the Canadian economy at large. But generally out in Alberta, there is still a reliance there. There's been some diversification. So you're seeing more focus on tech and trying to get some of the tech companies and scale ups positioned within Alberta. Across Canada, I mean, if you look at the last kind of Statistics Canada and the Bank of Canada report, it's actually quite startling, not in a good way. Our biggest employer across Canada is now the government. And so, if you're putting your economist hat on or whatever, saying private sector may not be doing as well, the public sector is doing all the hiring. Where is that GDP growth coming from? And for the past 2 years, it seems like it was real estate as opposed to actual economic growth. So Canada West, there's some problems for sure that need to be worked out. Hyper specific to Alberta, definitely still a very energy-based economy. Yeah.
Very interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks. All right. So let's move on to innovation and your current role of Vice President in Innovation, Construction Tech or Technology. So what do you do in this role actually? Like, how's your day? How is your day-to-day like?
Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
It's a good question. I don't have a canned answer for that because it's so different every day. There's essentially like 3 or 4, maybe 5 buckets that I focus on. So the first one is our kind of traditional VDC team, which we're transitioning into digital project delivery. This team is focused on actually deploying VDC on active construction projects, helping with pursuits, also with the handover. They also kind of operate and support a lot of our drones and reality capture and kind of any of those pieces that traditionally you think around BIM and VDC management. So there's about 60, 70 folks across Canada deployed on site, and we have a pretty good team there. So that's one piece of the focus, and it could be anything depending on what time of the year we're at. Could be about a big project we're getting up and running, working with our team, seeing do we have the right pieces in place. It could be as simple as kind of looking at our contracts and our tech stack and worrying about renewals or certain things which aren't as fun, maybe. So that's one part. Another part very closely related is our VDC services team. So these are the folks that actually offer these services in the market. So it's not from an EllisDon deployment on a job site. It's to the market. Could be to EllisDon. It could be to our clients or anybody who needs a scan done, who needs a model done, CAD work done, so on and so forth. The third kind of focus piece really for me would be with our team, which we call the construction technology team. So every new job that gets set up, these folks help them get set up on our in-house project management software, get set up on our document control management software, FieldWire, and then all of our construction technology partnerships. So
how big is this team, this innovation team?
That contact team is about 6 people maybe across Canada. And so, yeah, could be our partners as well. StruxHub, Timescapes, TouchPlan, so on and so forth. And then we also have a smaller segment of the team, which is purely focused on the pilots and the accelerator. And so there's only, myself and 2 or 3 other people working on that side. And that's everything from existing pilots to new pilots to looking at the accelerator, running through the applicants, setting it up, getting all those kind of future pieces ready as well. And so when you combine all of that, that's kind of what the day-to-day is. So it could be a mix of any of those things. Some of it can be really, really exciting, kind of greenfield opportunities. Some of it is more, okay, let's go back and how do we now figure out the next step on something that may not have gone so well. Other times it's just completely novel situations, which, we as a team have never faced. So new proposal, new requirements, new startup, new ask. It could be from the business side, from the client side, internally. So there's a lot of fun variety as well, Martin.
I was curious on these pilots. Are these pilots based on the company implementing technology within the company? Is that this type of pilots? Okay. So is it existing new technology that you implement from the outside in, or perhaps you work on some technology kind of internally? Which one of those?
Yeah. Great point. It could be either or. Mainly our focus is on the startups though. So we'll have a different team that does in-house product development. If they're doing a new feature on their module, say like an RFI module, they'll work with the team separately and do all that kind of stuff. our focus, to your point, is really about the startup ecosystem, the marketplace, looking at a tool or an option, provider, hardware, whatever it is, looking at maybe an opportunity on an upcoming project or a current project, pairing those things up to try it out, and then being able to baseline that to say, hey, how would we traditionally manage that scope, that risk, or whatever it is, compared to how now with this new technology, tool, hardware, we're able to do it? Is it a one-to-one, or is it something that's completely new that did not exist before? And testing it out to see, okay, is this something that we should scale up to an enterprise level, or is this good for one-off situations that meet certain criteria? That's kind of the high-level idea there, is continuing to introduce new technology that can help solve current problems or project-related problems that we got to address.
So assuming that there is a technology that you guys notice that that the company can benefit from, what is your evaluation process when thinking about adopting it and having a pilot with them, or no?
If
there is a process.
Yeah, no, there's a process, but I don't know if it's one size fits all.
So give us maybe an example of one, or maybe without, I don't know if you want to share some names or not.
Yeah.
Maybe just give a sense of how the process can look like.
Yeah. Okay. Let's give you a couple of small examples quickly then. Let's say one pilot that we went through was the poll planning stuff. So, we had Touch Plan, we had Hoilu, there's other tools like Neali and so on and so forth. We noticed the business was organically using some, but a lot of it wasn't being used. So you had this big gap where some teams and projects may have used one of those solutions, but when you looked at it as an organization and corporately as a means and method, we didn't have a way of managing that. So we jumped in with the pilot program, said, okay, a couple of teams that are using Hoilu continue, a couple that are using TouchPlan continue, as we gathered feedback, and really noticed that regardless of the platform, the feedback was really good compared to traditional XYZ benefits, right? So I have access for the entire project. I don't lose it. I can, if I can't be on site, I can look at it. If I'm trying to coordinate with someone, and usually we'd have to wait until they're physically there, now we can get things done quicker, adding information like as-built stuff and whatnot. So we really saw that there is a big benefit already from those, 4 or 5 pilot sites. So then the next step from there was like, okay, well, we need a tool now that would make sense for the organization. So we put together kind of an RFP process, sent it out to 2 or 3 of the vendors. And from there, we signed a partnership with TouchPlan probably 6 months ago now. And that's one example of, a pilot that went through and scaled enterprise wide. Another example would be.
So Hammad, just give me a sec. So on this one, you would run 3 pilots, for example, of the same solution, but from different companies, right? And then decide which one is fits the best.
In this case, that's what we did. Yeah. But not always, right? Sometimes it'll just be that one solution. So that's a good example right there. Another one, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is BuildDots.
Yes. We had them a few months ago.
You had them on the podcast. Yeah. So
yes.
We brought them in, ran them on a project in Toronto, went through, probably over a year and a half of that pilot until we were able to confirm technology works. Here's everything we need on our side to make it work. And then what projects should we be using it on? So it wasn't an enterprise-wide tool that would work on every job like TouchPlan does for us, but it is still a tool that fits into our options depending on the type of project, the risk profile, the quality of information that's going to be available from the modeling side, and so on.
So you mentioned just a few seconds ago that here is I think you said something, here's the requirements that from our point of view, the technology provider needs to meet, right? Something like this. What is the example of these requirements? Like, can you share some light on this?
Yeah. So there's 3 big pieces. So data, all the data requirements, where it's stored, do we have access, can it get deleted, those kind of things. Then there's the security. That's from a cyber standpoint, or the way that your team's developing software, for example, through company issued laptops, through managed services. So if something did happen, that provider would have ability to lock things down and whatnot. And then legal would be, the clauses that may exist in there. Some clauses are pretty wide and open, which open up a lot of risk potentially. Other clauses throw things in which we as a brand and EllisDon as a corporation do not necessarily agree with or are open to. So a lot of times you'll see in a standard agreement, hey, we're able to throw your logo on wherever we want, however we want, so on and so forth. So, from a legal standpoint, it could be actually terms that are conflicting and could cause risk, or even brand image marketing kind of stuff like that. So those are the 3 pieces that need to get cleared on every piece of software. And then outside of that, for us, also the requirements, it needs to fit into our construction technology ecosystem. So we have some current tools, whether it's in-house or third party. We're trying to obviously get to a place where we have a very good tech stack that helps the business out and is reflective of the different needs of our business. And so we don't want to necessarily introduce things that don't match up with that ecosystem and can help us build that and kind of manage the data, push, pull, leverage our in-house resources, whether it's creating our own dashboards or connections and APIs between these platforms, things like that as well.
Do you find that startups usually have it kind of exercised from the past experiences with companies like yours, or this is usually something very new and they spend months to just adjust to your requirements?
It's all over, man. It's all over. So some of them are lucky, like they come in and they start working with the big companies right off the bat, and so they may have a little bit of a better start. Others have grown, through maybe smaller markets, mid-sized markets, and then they start coming in. So it's all over the place. Some of them also work with other folks, right? Some may be coming from DPR, Haskell, Suffolk. So they've gone through a similar process on their side, but our requirements may be different. Again, we're based in Canada, so we have different requirements for our big government, and high risk kind of projects. So Martin, it really, really depends. Some of them are coming out with SOC 2 compliance, for example, somehow and all that. Others are like, you want SSO, okay, it's on the roadmap. It's not going to be ready for another 5 months or something like that. So you get everything.
Yeah, I can imagine. So maybe let's plug some piece of advice to startup founders and operators. What should they have already developed to start thinking of working with companies like EllisDon?
Oh man, that's a great question. So from corporate enterprise tool versus startup, it may not be the best alignment. Right? Like, I mean, if you're still really early, like some of the folks that we talk to and we're trying to work with, it may not make sense for you to get at that level of corporate kind of security governance and all of that, as you don't have a lot of resources and you're trying to still find that product market fit. So I guess what it depends on is, what is it that the tool is trying to provide? If it's more of a craft worker tool versus, an on-site project management tool versus more of its specialty, could be engineering or design tool, depending on what part you're focusing on, I think would help a lot in terms of clarifying that. The second thing would be reach out and talk to some folks, whether it's someone like myself or my peers or others in the industry. You can really probably talk to 3-4 people, get a good understanding of what it would be like to work with EllisDon and some of the others, see what kind of requirements. We always provide intake forms as well, so it's easy for the startup to see exactly what we're looking for, and then start to look at it holistically across the market. If that is your segment that you're going for, okay, what overlaps and what can we do? And also being clear on some of the areas. As you're a startup founder, you're probably becoming more and more aware of like the cyber and kind of security compliance side of things. So if you already have answers and protocols, maybe you don't have SOC 2 yet, but you can go through on how you're managing those things and how it's part of your future roadmap. That can really help as well, because it shows that you're thinking about it. It's not that you're ignoring it, you don't want to do it, but you've got to prioritize and build your product and company accordingly. So I'm not sure, Martin, if that's really going to help enough, but I do think you need to get into a room and have a conversation and try and build those steps out, because each company is unique.
Yeah, can agree. So what's the typical time from pitch deck to tech implementation with an EllisDon?
Oh man,
6 weeks or 6 months?
Everything. So I think the quickest we've done it is probably within 3 months. And the longest has definitely taken over a year. So,
and that's because of the kind of structure of a startup, or and lack of these like basic securities, etc., or some other reasons.
I guess it's a confluence of things. So you have the startup side, where are they, their maturity, all that, and then you have the business side. So even though we have a pretty big operation and scale, we have more flexibility to be able to find projects and get technology to be able to pilot on. The project still needs to be in the right phase of its life cycle. So if you're offering, let's say, like Timescapes is one of the tools. We went through a time lapse and a camera solution for a project, and we're already done pouring concrete and we're already doing envelope. So for me to bring you on now to do a pilot, you're not going to get the value, and the team may not leverage the tool that the way it's intended to. So we're going to kind of handicap, if you will, that pilot. It's not going to get the results. But if we wait another 6 months or whatever, so we can get you on a job right from the get-go, you're seeing site prep, demolition, us doing kind of excavation, pouring the substructure, foundation, superstructure, steel, envelope, everything. Now all of a sudden, really, really good fit for that type of technology. And so whether you're a tool like Provision that does contract risk analytics, or something like Smart Barrel that does timekeeping and management, or you're something, like what's a good example? Not like a BIM tool. One of them, I don't know. Like we could talk about Synapse from the Netherlands, for example. All of those fit in a different part of the project lifecycle. So if we were to just try and throw them into one same structured pilot program, you wouldn't get the outcome of the software or the startup that they're trying to provide. And then for us as an organization, we would say, oh no, this technology doesn't work for us, even though we didn't give it the right opportunity, depending on the project, the life cycle, where the tool fits in, and looking at our portfolio across the country.
Brilliant. You must be getting quite a lot of pitch decks thrown into your email. Is that the case? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the most what's the technology that you come across the most recently that people throw at you?
I think you know really well. Yeah. Everything has AI on it now, right? So I think that on one of the kind of things that I wrote a little bit ago, just as a joke, just called it soup du jour, right? Because that's everything became an AI startup overnight. And even tools that were using AI before, whether it's like algorithm or automating whatever, to things that completely pivoted and started calling themselves AI tools. So I think that's the number one thing you're seeing right now is like, hey, we're an AI startup, or we use AI, or we do AI. And really, it's almost like you got to peel that back and then look at what they say after that. Is kind of the filtering thing, right?
Yeah, because like layer everyone is putting on the AI layer, but what's the outcome? What's the service really running?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's number one. There is a lot more focus on infrastructure technology as well, probably because of that U.S. Infrastructure Act and the massive work that we're seeing around, not just North America, but also in Europe as well for infrastructure. So you're seeing more startups focused on that side as well.
Can you give an example of service or a product?
Yeah. So, I mean, we haven't had too many new ones on that side for us. But in terms of if you look in the market, even, AI clearing, we worked with them piloted, I think 2019 originally. And then now you look at the product that they have and what they've built. If you're doing any heavy civil infrastructure, whether it's renewables like solar, bridge, earthworks, dams, it's kind of like a no-brainer on that side. Then there's other examples as well. So some stealth companies that are, maybe not out there yet, but they're building kind of these, how do you take GIS and infrastructure, even urban planning design stuff, and automate that? So typically, maybe we would go on existing site plans from municipalities, and maybe you go to open maps, you'd pull that stuff up, create extrusions and all of that. Now they're training their kind of model essentially to look at the satellite images, create CAD layers and plans that are delineated the way that you would if you're a CAD manager with CAD standards, and then create extrusions and stuff based on the geometry and height. So really quickly now you're able to get updated, CAD and 3D model files on topography and terrain and cities. When they're out of stealth, maybe I can send you their name, but a startup there on that side. And then also from kind of the robotics and hard technology side. So there's companies like, Dig Robotics that are trying to automate excavators and bulldozers, expanders, another example. They're trying to kind of create these automatic systems that let these heavy civil pieces of equipment move and operate, excavate to certain depths. And then another good one would be, I think, project controls maybe. So you're seeing a lot of that stuff coming up, which again, I think the UK market's been generally a little bit further ahead when it comes to project controls, just like with quantity surveying. That's not something culturally you typically see in North America. But given these massive infrastructure jobs like cranes, railways, whatnot, you're seeing project controls come in as well. So, you've got American startups like Smart PM. You've got some of the UK folks like Smart PMO, I think, and Foresight Works. And those are just a few examples on that side as well.
Okay. Which technologies, or maybe which areas of construction tech you see are under-penetrated and you would like to see more startups and more solutions tackling these problems?
Oh man, great question. I don't think I have a good answer for you there. One of my favorites, now that we're talking is looking at craft workers, field workers. So we just partnered with a company called CrewScope, and what they're focused on is creating an alignment between upper management and the plan, the site team, and then actually the people that put the work in place. You look at it historically, a lot of tools focused on the back office, a lot of tools focused on project managers, PMs, and all that kind of stuff, which makes sense given where the industry was and how they were kind of not as mature maybe in terms of offerings from a digital standpoint. But now there's kind of an opportunity to bridge the gap with the people that actually do the work, right? So they hammer the nails, they put the pipe in the ground, they put the rail down, so on and so forth. The production comes from these individuals, and they've been ignored for quite a long time. And so what CrewScope's doing and why kind of it made a lot of sense for us was if you're able to now get the people aligned with our production rate, our targets, what is it we got to get done this week? And then you get your crews on site lined up to that same vision, start to compete essentially or gamify the process. And so if I'm a concrete crew and it's like, hey, this week we need to get done these columns, and formwork for the slab up above. And if we do that, you're going to get certain thresholds and points, but it's not just about you, it's about your crew. So it's not just me as an individual hitting those milestones, it's making sure everyone on my crew gets to that level. And then we all get our points distributed. And then you can use that to go get gift cards, whatever you want. And it sounds very simple, but that gamification and unit kind of methodology or creating kind of that bond, aligning it back to the bigger picture of what maybe the organization and upper management is looking for production. Now it creates a huge alignment, which you weren't able to do before unless you had really, really good people, really experienced people You knew how to kind of break down the plans, get different crews together, which isn't very easy to do, right? So that's an example that I'm really excited about, is the craft workers and the field focused technology coming in. And hopefully that's going to help unlock more productivity on that side.
Interesting. So do you think this will come into to contracts in the future, to a degree that you will have a contract with like 3 different benchmarks, or a benchmark, and then there will be a performance above, and there will be additional like payment for achieving this performance based on this gamified app or platform?
Maybe who knows, right? So currently the way it works is like, you set your points for the team and they're able to reach that target, and then they get it distributed. In the future, I think the bigger opportunity, even outside of what we're talking about right now, Martin, is just how do we look at this construction paradigm, flip it on its head, and change how we do procurement altogether? I mean, no matter which technology we look at, whether it's something like CrewScope, whether it's something like, Timescapes or TouchPlan or StruxHub or whatever, great tools in the current paradigm, but the current paradigm needs to flip. The easiest way to explain it why is because it's set up in a way that reflects the technology and tools and the means and methods that existed a long time ago. And it's actually pretty innovative. A lot of people argue against this point, but I will stand by it, that the way that construction industry is set up, even though there's a lot of inefficiency, rework, waste, so on and so forth, it's so innovative in the way that we've been able to come up with these contract and procurement methodologies. But now, with the technology available, the means and methods available, the new kind of societal ideals that we're chasing from an environmental standpoint, and using as much material, reducing waste, so on and so forth, there's a significantly better way to go about looking at how we procure work. It could, be looked at in other industries. If you look at design for manufacturing and assembly or other kind of pieces similar to that, but moving the procurement methodology altogether into a new paradigm. And if you look at the current structure, so we've come up with like IPD, integrated project delivery, design build, some of these other contract types that have tried to become more innovative and create a shared risk pot, and they've yielded good outcomes. But if you want to do that at scale, you've got to replace the way that the design bid works, right? The way the lump sum contracts work, the way that a lot of the CM contracts may work. And each market and segment is so different too, that you may have on some sides kind of EPCM contracts, like on oil and gas and heavy process projects, which are a lot tighter and do focus more on that front end, given the operational cost downstream. But then the rest of the industry is still using the same contract method that you could build, in the 1960s, essentially. Not much has changed. And then IPD and some of these kind of new models are bringing in a more people-focused shared pain and gain, but technology isn't necessarily driven into the front and center of like, hold on, we do have BIM. We can get really high quality models. We can get trades involved earlier on than we traditionally would to have a better product. We can use elements of cultural change like quantity surveyors or project controls and bring these things in. And now how would we go about the procurement process?
Okay. On the robotics, I think you mentioned that you see more, quite a lot of pitch decks, right, on the robotics, because that went just after you mentioned AI. Where do you think robots have their place, or like robotic solutions have their place within construction? Or are we early, or are we in the right time now to think about these solutions? What's your thoughts?
Oh man, I love this topic. So robots are inherently cool.
Yes.
Like, I don't know anybody that doesn't think a robot is cool.
I agree.
There's also kind of a demographic shift. I don't know. I didn't think I'm old, or you either, Martin, but a lot of people don't get the jokes of the Terminator and Sarah Connor anymore. There also used to be this hilarious movie, which is actually pretty bad now that you look at it in hindsight, called Short Circuit, And there's this Johnny robot in Toronto. So these jokes used to be really good. You'd bring them in and show kind of our superintendents and PMs, the drywall robot from Japan, for example, and everybody would get a good kick out of it. Now the demographics shifted. So a lot of the folks we're talking to, they're like, first of all, who is Sarah Connor? And secondly, they're like, they don't even know Short Circuit. And they're like, what is that reference? And so I think that's a good representation of the world we're in and why robotics is going to be such a no-brainer, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years. Again, nobody knows how long things will take and how it's going to ebb and flow. So it's a little bit of a long stretch, but looking at the trends, it's kind of clear. So on one side, you have less people attracted to the construction industry. So there's a lot of campaigns across Canada. For example, Canadian Construction Association did this thing called Talent Lives Here. And so it was a campaign to try and attract people into the construction industry because nobody thinks it's a cool, viable career path. Then on top of that, you have that labor shortage crisis you've been hearing so much about because people with the experience are retiring at a pace that new people are not coming in. And if you are getting new people, they're not skilled. So not only are you losing people, you're gaining fewer people, but the people you are gaining don't have that knowledge. So you're exposing yourself to bigger risk. Then the next kind of trend, which we're seeing because of the, ESG, the green movement, and some of those other shifts is we can't be as inefficient as we used to be. So in situ, we'll fit it in place, cut material, create waste, whatever. You combine those three kind of factors that are happening right now, and robotics all of a sudden becomes a lot more palatable, right?
Viable.
Economically, I think we're still not at a point where it balances out because it's still cheaper to add human labor, and the human can do more things than just one specialized robot can do. And that's a whole different, conversation if you ever get a chance with any of the robotics founders to get into is specialized robot versus a generalist robot and how different kind of it comes down to the actual value. Because at surface level, you think more the robot can do, the better the value is going to be. But then it becomes so complex that you can't do any one thing too well. So going back to the specialized robots, looking at the kind of confluence of factors, I think that's where we're going to start to see a little bit of an overlap. And I think we do need some sort of subsidy or assistance or some sort of an uplift in the market to be able to introduce these technologies. So that's why I think robots is going to be exciting and kind of where they're heading. If that makes sense, that's kind of the tailwinds for it. But I do still see it as quite an uphill battle because you're looking at it, you're competing in the marketplace, you got to get the job done within schedule, within budget. You want to create profitability. And now you're bringing in a robot that you don't know if it's going to hit any of those thresholds. Is it going to make your people more productive? Is it going to be a little bit slower? You're keeping the same crew, but you're just adding a robot. It's very, very hard right now to be able to, pontificate the business value and actually take that risk in the marketplace. But with those other pieces, so incentivization programs, rebates, certain credits, whatever it is, that could really take away a little bit of the risk and create a little bit of a quicker uptake, if you will, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that the divergence of the labor cost and then on the other side, the labor cost increasing and technology cost decreasing. At some point, there will be a cross on this chart, and it will be much more expensive to hire someone than to build a robot that can be operated by someone who is perhaps who was doing perhaps a bricklaying work in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen that, right? So if you think about the different innovation waves, so for example, when the Industrial Revolution happened in Britain with the cotton mill, and then you had the railway networks come up, and then you had heavy manufacturing, the Model T, Henry Ford, all that kind of stuff. During that era, to create just a nail, like hammer a nail, you used to have so many people involved to create a nail. Today, I don't even think a person's really involved to create a nail. It's all automated, right? And through each of those waves, it shifted. It went from maybe a dozen people to maybe a handful of people to a couple of people to no people involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the same idea. I think we're going to have to see that kind of a shift and trend to your point. And if you look at the cost of labor, cost of robotics, where is that going to overlap? And then, where do we get that return?
I agree. So speaking of robots, maybe you can say from the business point of view, or perhaps your personal view on which vertical the robots will be the best suited at this point. Maybe there is a business need within EllisDon kind of right now. Are you guys looking at a particular outcome that could be fairly easily provided by robots within your organization?
Yeah, so I think there's maybe from the EllisDon's standpoint, it's just the portfolio. So they do everything from construction management to general contracting. So on that side of the business, it would really be our trade partners that we work with. So think about all the drywall trades we work with, mechanical, electrical contractors. If we could bring in things like Dusty, Rugged, or HP, and again, change the paradigm of construction. So procurement was happening a lot differently so that we don't put the layout into the subcontractor scope only. We have an ability to share that and then also kind of take away the financial implication of that. So right now, if I hired you, Martin, to do drywall, I'm also putting in your contract generally that you're responsible for all of your layout. But if I bring in a robot that does all the layout for everyone, you're not going to give me a credit back of X amount saying, hey, I'm not doing the layout anymore. Right. So there's certain things like that. So that's one aspect that there's a huge opportunity for, of course, EllisDon and our group of companies, but also the market at large is if we can figure out how to align those things that are done from a different era where the risk profile made sense, but now where technology is unifying it, we need a modern way of doing that. You'd see huge growth. And layout, I think, is the most obvious one because it forces a good design and building information model up front, which is really would solve a lot of the pain points that we have in the industry. And then lets you do automated layout and other robotics. So that'd be one area. Outside of that kind of purview, if you're looking at it from my perspective, there's a lot of value from a societal standpoint, I think. So for, the government to incentivize or provincial governments within Canada, that it becomes the construction technology marketplace where you use these tools, not just where you're giving funding to startups to come up with ideas, but practically you become the hotbed for deploying these robots. And so Ray's Robotics is a great example from San Francisco. They do robotic installations of post concrete anchors. It could be for curtain wall. It could be for whatever else. So instead of a person hanging over the edge of a slab, could be 10 stories in the air, it could be 30 stories in the air. Robot, computer vision, arm, and everything comes out, takes a look at the edge of slab. What is it? Can drill inserts and all that kind of stuff. A different angle would be like Optimotive. They provide these really good, cheap robots on an ATV frame that can run back and forth. They're autonomous. You can put different payloads on them. They have this cool doghouse that can go park into charge and through Starlink send your data back up. Think about all the jobs that are big roadways, big solar planes, data centers, battery plants, automotive manufacturing, massive scale sites that typically we wouldn't be able to capture as frequently. Or you'd need a drone, which again is a different level of capture than terrestrial. That's another angle. I think there's a huge opportunity for the industry at large. I don't know if those are good examples or not, but I could keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, very good, very good. So I definitely want to touch on the accelerator, but before that, how do you assess ROI on innovation? Is it a financial ROI, or is it any other way to look into it as organization?
Very good question. So if you're looking at it from innovation as an ROI metric, you wouldn't do innovation, right? It's just not possible. It needs to be looked at as a bucket of experiments that you're doing, knowing that majority of those experiments may not work. The ones that do work now, you got to put through that lens of, okay, what is that tangible ROI. So before we get to ROI and all that, you got to look at it as we're trying to introduce things that we don't know how they will work or they won't work. And so if you focus purely on the ROI of something you don't know, you're just coming up with hypotheticals. And that's a problem because I can now use hypotheticals to justify things that I think are cool, but now that's subjective to me or the individual doing that process.
Yeah.
And then you can present that to a board or whoever has kind of buy-in, depending on your ability to lie with statistics and data, you can get the outcomes you want.
Yeah.
So I think the first important thing is to understand that if you want to do innovation, you want to try new things, and you want to introduce a new method or means of doing things differently, you've got to accept that they may not work. And so running it concurrently compared to the traditional process, whether it's a one-to-one or it's completely different, is I think a good baseline to help make sure that you're covering a little bit of the risk from not having an ROI. And then the other thing is when you look at value captured, it's not just about return on investment. That's obviously the major one that we think about from a traditional business standpoint, especially as you're getting things to scale. But I think it's more about time to value.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing innovation, you're doing a pilot, you're testing things out, looking at what is that time to value as opposed to ROI. And then you can bring in the ROI. Now I want to clarify that. Say we're doing something that is not an innovation project, right? It's not something novel. It may be new for the business, but it's not novel at large for the industry. Then of course you want to look at it as what's going to be the ROI of us spending X on this platform to replace the manual process Y, right? That makes a lot more sense. But when it's something new that you don't know is going to work, it may fail. If you go through the ROI lens, you're probably not even going to do 90% of those. And then you wouldn't know what the outcome would be or some of the other learnings that you may have that lead to something else down the road, right? An example is we're looking at the time-lapse solutions originally is more because across the company, we're using dozens and dozens of these providers. We had no single source. And we're not going to go build one of these because there's so many good options in the market. So as we're going through and we're working through that very finite use case, testing things out, all of a sudden we see a huge value prop that came out based on the fact that computer vision models are something that are going to have more and more value over the next 5 years. And if we can find the right provider where we can work on that thing, all of a sudden the ROI conversation changes completely for the business. Right. So that's kind of my answer to that, which a lot of people won't like.
6%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of numbers, is there any like a dollar value on that you guys are willing to put on innovation annual basis within the organization or not really?
Yeah. I don't know if I have that at the top of my head, but I can say it's definitely better than maybe the benchmark in the industry. EllisDon's is definitely more innovative and forward, and it's kind of a top-down approach, right? So our CEO, previous CEO, and currently the executive chairman of the board really created that vision that, hey, everybody at EllisDon, you guys work for a software company, whether you realize it or not. Yeah, we're builders and that's the core and we're always going to kind of focus on that, but we got to start looking at the digital side more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So I think compared to the industry benchmark, that 1.1% of revenue on R&D spend versus like 3-4%. I think EllisDon's probably more in line with the higher end of the construction industry for sure, but I don't have actual numbers on that.
That's fine. Thank you very much for that. Right, let's move on to Contact Accelerator Program. So in 2023, you guys had more than 100 applicants in the program. And this year, I believe you have 165 plus. So yeah, tell us about Contact Accelerator Program.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So the accelerator, to your point, started last year. So the inaugural program, we worked with a great organization called Impulse Partners out of Paris. And essentially, the idea there was we don't have a corporate venture arm. We don't have a fund.
Why not?
So, great question.
Such a popular thing right now. Huh?
It is. It's another popular flavor of the day, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have a corporate venture arm. We don't have traditional capital to deploy. So where does the value that we bring come in? From our standpoint and our digital team, the leadership, all that, they've always believed that we need to work to foster innovation. They've seen what startups can bring and provide, but there was no formal engagement mechanism. And then, for me, myself, having been kind of on the construction tech side for the past several years, I know a lot of the venture capital folk, a lot of corporate venture capital, seen kind of some of that unfolding as well. And a lot of the folks we worked with went through accelerator programs, but different traditional accelerator programs. So they're looking to give you, some cash or equity for taking a percentage of ownership, which makes sense, right? They're giving you value in one way and you're trying to get product market fit quicker. Then we looked at the other corporate venture capitals within construction, and they're providing capital as well, but also a test bed of their active projects and their business and so on and so forth. So looking at it from that lens, what is it that we could do that would make it worthwhile for a startup without us putting cash in? Understanding that there's all these other accelerator programs in the marketplace already that on paper may seem like a higher value proposition. And so what we landed with was, EllisDon operates coast to coast, which is very unique. Even the other US peers that we kind of talk to and chat with have a pretty big footprint. Not many of them can operate across 14, 15 different jurisdictions from, the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean like we do. Because of that, we see a lot of differences in the cities that we operate in and the regions that we have that gives you a lot of good market feedback a lot quicker than maybe some of the other more regional focused players in the US would. The other thing is EllisDon's brand is quite, in my opinion, fantastic. So people trust EllisDon. They know the company. Even people that don't know EllisDon and they start looking into it, they're like, oh, cool. Okay, yeah, quite a amazing organization. So there's a bit of a boost there as well that you would get. And again, going back to the way that EllisDon protects the brand, they don't typically let anyone market their logo and stuff like that. So if you see any vendor on their website putting the logo, it's either because they're doing it without our permission or there's actually some sort of a strategic partnership in place. And so that carries a lot of weight as well. And then the third thing was when it comes to product market fit, we do that all the time. We just weren't doing it in a formalized method. Mm-hmm. So you're a startup, you want to get to a place where you can get to an enterprise level tool. Well, if we've got, 2,000 to 3,000 of the best project managers, superintendents, field coordinators, quality people, VDC folks, and so on and so forth, what better way for you to get involved and get that feedback from actual people who would be the end users generally? So we put all those pieces together and said, okay, how about this? We put an accelerator in place that lets startups apply. We don't ask for equity or take equity, and we don't put money in. But if you're looking for money and you need some cash, we'll help you. We'll connect you with the different folks in our network and try and help you out on that side. Where we want to work with you is for 18 months. We want to bring your product into this pilot program and see what refinement you need, what help you need. Is it purely product? Is it ideation? Is it actually kind of A/B testing? Whatever makes sense, and running that 18 months so that by the end of it, you're either at a point that you're really, really well positioned in the market and you're ready to go and expand, or we've worked through why it would not work, what the negatives are, and gives you some tangible feedback on where you can focus. Mm-hmm. And to our surprise, like the first year, again, I'm not trying to be overly negative, but I thought we were going to get maybe 20, 30 applications because you've got some big names with big money that we're competing against. And we ended up with over 100 applicants. And then same thing this year. I was like, okay, maybe if we're lucky around 100, and we ended up over 160 plus, maybe 170 applicants, right? So there is a big need, I think, in the marketplace that our accelerator program provides value for a lot of the startups. that the others aren't. And it's, I think, very complementary. Because if we're doing something, it doesn't mean some of the other folks in the US can't participate or wouldn't want to look at that organization now. I think it gives it a different viewpoint of, okay, EllisDon's looking at it. It's in their accelerator program or pilot program. There's a little bit of a validity there. And it doesn't conflict too much with what they're trying to do with their existing accelerator programs or innovation programs, right? It's kind of complementary. So that's kind of the background and the reason why we set it up the way we did, Martin.
Mm-hmm. And is it geographically agnostic, or is it Canada-based startups?
All over the world. Yeah, we've had startups from, Middle East, Asia, Europe, South America, and of course, all over North America as well.
Okay. And so I guess this year is already closed, is it? Or is it still?
Yeah. This year's closed. We had 165 narrowed down to 8 finalists that we're inviting down to our offices in Mississauga. It's going to take place October 7, 8, and 9.
Mm-hmm. I guess for you guys, it's a great way of also scouting technology and checking what's out there and what can you adapt. So out of this 100 from last year, can you give us some numbers of like what did you deploy within EllisDon or anything on that?
Yeah, so I think from the 8 finalists that we had last year, 3 of them made it through as winners. So we're running the full-scale 18-month pilot with all 3 of them. So those ones are still underway. Is Provision, which does contract risk analytics using large language models. We have SiteLink, which uses augmented reality and virtual reality, and kind of the advancements they've been able to develop on that side. And then we have The Link, which is looking at construction specifications and submittal logs specifically. And so those 3, they're out there. We've gone through different deployments or different iterations. All 3 of them have a different rollout, if you will, because one size doesn't fit all. So we've tailored it depending on that solution. Outside of that, we've ended up working with a couple of the applicants and finalists as well. So we're working with Verify 3D, Zynaps, or VDC teams, kind of using that platform and tool. There's been a couple of others as well. Right now, the names are escaping me that we ended up testing or piloting as well, just because there's a good fit for the business anyways, right? So that definitely is something that happens. And then to your point, looking at that list and just keeping up to date with what's happening, because startups change so fast compared to maybe the construction industry. So, something a year ago that may have been focused on procurement logs or something like that may have evolved into something completely different, like central purchasing now. And so you got to keep revisiting those folks as well.
Yeah. Hammad, we're definitely out of time right now in our 8 minutes, but I have plenty more questions, so perhaps we can do round 2 at some point. So tell us where people can find more about you, EllisDon, and Contact Accelerator program, perhaps for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So for EllisDon, EllisDon.com website has a lot of information about the company, the history, the projects, any opportunities as well if you want to join the team. For myself, visit me on LinkedIn, probably the best place to get a hold of me. And then for the accelerators, EllisDon-accelerator.com. We've opened up the waitlist for next year as well. So please, if you're interested, you have questions, make sure you add yourself to the waitlist. Also reach out. I'm more than happy to talk through the accelerator program or even a pilot program to see if there's any opportunities there.
Okay. Brilliant, Hammad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.